Welcome to Global Bones Podcast, where companies cross borders. In today's episode, we are interviewing a multilingual professional who has moved from engineering to funding an Amazon agency that operates worldwide. We talk about his multilingual background, cultural differences when selling cross borders, and the importance of networking and attending face to face events in this industry. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hello, Vincenzo. How are you?
Good, Oscar. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine. Uh, Global Bones podcast being an internationalization and cross-border podcast, so we needed to have you because of basically your multilingual background. What
Yeah.
can you tell us about precisely who Vincenzo Toscano is, and what do you do at your current position at Ecomcy?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I can give you a little bit of background on this. Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, my background is all over the place. So I've been jumping across different countries and cultures. So just to summarize it, basically, I was born in Italy, in Naples. And when I was around 4 years old, my family decided to move to Venezuela because Venezuela, like 15, 20 years ago, was meant to be like the Dubai of Latin America. Everybody was looking, forward to go there because there was a lot of business and the petrol era. There was a lot of money being moved around the region. And we moved to Venezuela, and then I basically grew up there. So I did my everything there. So my high school, everything in terms of my childhood and so on. And when I became around 18 years old, I decided to then leave the country because then the country became very unstable because of
Mhm.
all the political reasons that we already know. And then from there, I decided to first try United States. So I went to the United States and I lived there around 1 year. Then from the
Uh-huh.
United States, I say actually let's also give it a try to Canada. So I went to Canada and lived there
Oh,
another
wow.
year. And then from Canada, I say, you know what? Actually, I also want to try United Kingdom. So I moved to the UK, and it seems like something clicked here. Now I've been here 10 years.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's why I end up now speaking. As we both basically discussed it when we met in Barcelona. I speak three languages, so Spanish, Italian, and English. So yes, I had the privilege of going to different regions, different learn from different cultures and all these different languages. And I think that's actually something that, of course, most likely we're gonna discuss more down the line in the podcast. Give me an edge when it comes to e-commerce, because especially when you do international e-commerce and you deal with different languages and cultures, the strategy needs to be tailored to the specific region you're targeting. And I think for
Mhm.
me, having that specific understanding of different regions gave me the flexibility in terms of how to navigate all the challenges that it comes when you sell internationally. Now, I was, yeah, as I said, been in the UK 10 years, but my background is actually nothing to do with e-commerce initially. I came to the
Mhm.
UK because I wanted to pursue my career as an engineer. So I started studying in aerospace engineering, and actually
Oh,
that's my
wow.
major. So that's what we call rocket scientists. That's me. So I did aerospace engineering and did my masters and everything here, and I started working for Rolls Royce, which most likely
Mhm.
people have heard the brand from cars, which is a very well known cars. But I was in more in the division that is actually the division that really drives the business forward in terms of revenue and profitability, which is the what we call the aviation space. So they do
Mhm.
like engines for the military and also commercial airplanes. And I was in the division of commercial airplanes, and it was in charge of basically doing some of the control systems behind some of these engines, right? Now 2 years go by, and basically the thing is, because I come from a family that is very business orientated,
Mhm.
entrepreneurs and so on, I always had the bug of myself that I actually want to do something of my own, because after a while I love engineering, but I realized that for the standards of life that I want in terms of freedom, and flexibility, and also the also the access to, in terms of basically resources, I was limited with engineering, because with engineering, like most 9 to 5 jobs, you have a ladder that you need to go in
Hmm.
terms of academics and in terms of your
Yeah.
career. And sometimes it might take you 30 years to really get to a point where you're gonna make the money, and you're gonna have the flexibility that you maybe want to reach. And I don't want to wait 30 years. I want it now, right? So basically, what I say, okay, let me do something on the side. Let me do some extra money and see if something pops up. And I started selling on Amazon. I remember during that period, Amazon was a very hot topic, still
Hmm.
is. And then from there, basically, I say, you know what? I'm gonna use some of the money from my salary. Like, I mean, I don't have a risk here, because if I lose all the money this month, and next month I get another paycheck, I try it again. I try it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a safe haven here, right? So basically, I did that until some of the products basically started to be successful, and some of the things I was selling. And then from there, I started then, go more deeper into the niche itself, the bubble of Amazon bubble, which is going to all these different events, the webinars,
Hmm.
and so on.
And
And
what
I
was
saw that,
that? Sorry.
you mean which year?
Yeah.
So that one was around, I would say, 2017, 18. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like easier
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
nowadays.
Much easier.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Uh-huh.
100%. Yeah. 100%. I would say, on that period of time, it wasn't as competitive, especially in terms of advertisement and so on. So,
Hmm.
of course, you had a competitive advantage back then. But I would say still is a very good opportunity. Just that now you need to be more methodical. And it's not anymore a side hustle. Like, it's not
Yeah.
something that now you can do after coming to work. Half an hour, you're gonna make
Yeah.
millions. It's
You
not the
need to
case
be
here.
professional. Like,
Professional now. It's not
yeah,
luck now. Yeah.
yeah,
So
definitely.
now going back to how I founded the agency. Basically, the agency was founded because I always had in the back of my mind, like, yeah, by going to these conferences and everything, that I saw that there was also a need, for actually for people to receive consultation and support, because I saw all these amazing founders had great products, great brands, because I was meeting them at conferences and everything. But when I had a look at the strategy and what they were doing, it was a mess. They didn't know what they were doing. And some of these, like, they were people already were doing a significant amount of revenue, and they wanted to scale, but they didn't have the knowledge. And I say, actually, there is a gap here where I can bring my knowledge with a very good team and actually offer as a service. Like, these people, some of these people, the reality is they want to have a business on Amazon, but they don't want the hustle of it. They just want to collect the paycheck, right? So they want
Yeah.
a team to actually take over. And that's where it comes. He came to the idea on the table, like, let's do an agency, like, to have these people that basically are on that position. And basically, Comsy was founded, and now it comes. It's gonna be almost 4 years old now.
Mhm,
And basically, the goal of the agency is full account management. So we specialize on taking full control of basically brands on Amazon, and now actually also Walmart. We are working very closely. One of the few, I think it's only 20 agencies right now that are being verified by Walmart. So we're also working
mhm,
with Walmart now in the States. And we are doing all the strategy behind that. So, advertisement, listings, images,
mhm.
branding, everything that you need to succeed on these marketplaces. And that is being quite a journey. I mean, the challenge of an agency, for those that might not know, is basically managing the team behind the agency, right? That's what drives the success of these type of businesses. And it's every single day, like, you have challenges in terms
Yeah,
of new team members joining, new
yeah.
clients, specific clients
It's
have
always
specific
the yeah, at the end of the day, even with like digital brands, or digital agencies, whatever, it all comes down to people and
people always.
to teams, and like people management is like a very,
It's difficult. Yeah.
yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy,
Yeah.
definitely.
It's basically what it can make or break your business. I will
Hmm.
say people is the key of this business model. And I will say, thankfully, I had the type of person that very good in terms of communicating, and what it comes like to really create a community. And that is what I've been building within Ecomcy. Like I'm always very transparent, and like I'm very forgiving, with sometimes a little bit too forgiving, but but the thing is, I really see people as people. It's not like I know some other agencies which is they just see people as a number, and here I really like I see people more like people, which is how it should be. And I think that's
Mhm,
been some of the key elements of the success of the agency. Like we are always very transparent with our clients. We always like own the mistakes or the wins.
mhm.
So yeah, it's been a
Do
journey.
you have, yeah, do you have like a multilingual or international team at
Yeah,
Ecomcy?
so we got people actually in Europe, which it would be
Mhm,
people German, Italian, Spanish, and French. We got people also in Latin America. So for people
mhm,
that we do Amazon Mexico, for example. So we got people in Mexico and Colombia. And we
mhm.
also got people in North America and in Asia. And the Asian team is
Uh-huh.
more also helping us with like helping with our suppliers, logistics, like in China, and we got
Mhm.
people in Philippines and India. So yeah, as you can see, we got people all across the globe. And I think the benefit of that is like, and this is a tip for anybody that has an agency. I would say never put all the same people on the same location, because the nature of e-commerce is international, is cross-border. You're going to have clients across the globe, and if you limit your interactions with the clients on a single time zone, that means you're limited with the growth you can have, which is on my case. When I'm sleeping, people in the States is working. When the people in the States is sleeping, people in the Asia is working. So always
Mhm.
is somebody 24/7 for the clients who working. And that's a good tip. Make sure you spread your team if you can across different locations to make sure that's the case. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really, really good tip. And precisely, and now going back a little bit about people management, because it's one of the topics I also I'm really passionate about. What about, do you see the differences in like when you have to manage people from like different countries and like different cultures, how you negotiate or even communicate with them?
Yeah.
Because that's a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I would say different cultures are going to have different ways of, first of all, setting expectations, and also the way they interact with clients and with you. So I would say that that's very important, because if you don't take that into consideration, you may assume that sometimes people is underperforming, or they're not being as professional as your team in different
Mhm,
locations. Sometimes just the culture of the place where these people is working from. It's not that they're bad people, it's just that in their subconsciousness, like for them that's the right thing to do, right? So I would say something that I always try to do when there is an issue, specifically, let's say with the team that I have in Asia compared to the team I have in United States. Like
mhm,
for example, I know I'm gonna make a very a simple example. Like for example, if I compare my team in Europe, this is actually a better example. If I compare my team in Europe against my team in the United States, in Europe, we all know that it's all about bank holidays, going out after 3 in the afternoon to have a Aperol spritz. This
yeah.
kind of lifestyle in Europe is very common. Like in Europe, in
Mhm,
summertime, like people don't,
uh,
it's not really as focused as you would say in other regions. And just the nature, it doesn't mean like those people are just lazy. It's just that it's part of their way, the human being as Europeans, right? So for example, something that you could straight away drive as a conclusion that when between June and let's say June and September, the performance of or the interaction of the European team compared to the ones in US, which in the US people is more workaholic, like they're more
yeah,
like
yeah.
not
Like
about
in
holidays,
Asia, maybe.
like
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So of course that sometimes creates conflict, because you might see, okay, people in Europe in 3 in the afternoon, 4 in the afternoon in Spain, for example, just to pick a random country, maybe they're already out having as I say, a coffee or a siesta, or as you call it.
Whatever. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but then the same team member in United States, you see them working until 8 in the afternoon. What we're trying to do to avoid any misunderstanding on my team is we don't assess actually our team based on how many hours or how many minutes you put on something. It's based
Mhm,
on results, right? because if we fall into the trap of managing teams on the same KPIs across different locations based
It
on, as
doesn't
I say,
work.
the communication, the time spent on the screen and everything, you're gonna straight away say, oh, this is not working, it's not working, it's not working, because you're gonna see a lot of red lights. Whereas if you focus on the performance, you might find that the same person in Spain maybe works until 2 in the afternoon, but they are more focused because their mindset is more like, oh, I have my whole morning and then in the afternoon I have my personal life, and I'm more efficient like that. Where maybe the person in the States, they need the whole day to actually focus, because there is this rule. I forgot the name of what is this phenomenon, but it's basically the summary of this phenomenon is like, if you give yourself 1 hour to do a task or 6 hours to do the task, if you
Hmm.
give yourself 6 hours, you're gonna spend 6 hours. If you give yourself 1 hour,
Yeah,
you might
yeah,
end up in
yeah.
1 hour. So the same applies here. So
Hmm.
I will say it's tricky. It's always gonna be tricky, but it's important for everybody listening that don't judge people the same, because just as that quick example I made you between Europe and USA, you might straight away say, "Oh, I already have all my people in the USA," because people in Europe maybe are not working this 12 hours I want people to work. It's not like that. It's just like people work on different schedules based on their cultures and their beliefs and how they
Yeah,
were
and
raised.
different
And
pace
yeah,
and
that's
everything.
why.
Yeah.
What
Hmm.
matters the
And
results. Yeah,
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 and even with, I mean, within Europe as well, because as you know, like Germans and Spaniards or French people have nothing to do.
yeah,
So no, but I do agree with what you were saying about the US culture versus like European bloc culture sort of
uh-huh.
thing, in terms of indulgence, no?
Mhm.
Which is like the free time and how we value
Yeah,
like to have like more free time and
yeah,
everything. Yeah,
of
it's so
course.
interesting. I mean, so interesting.
Mm.
I always come, I mean, end up like talking about this in most all episodes. In any case, going back to Ecomcy, so thanks obviously to your multilingual background, which I can tell you you're like such a privileged man to like to be like proficient in 3 languages and 3 cultures, which
Yeah.
is not just the language but the culture. um how different or what are the strategies different or differ from one country to another in terms of like cross-border Amazon
Yeah,
selling? What can
yeah.
you tell us, or what's your intakes from your um, obviously like background plus your
hmm
professional
Yeah,
experience?
yeah, of course. I would say very simple example, and this is also something that I'm pretty sure people is gonna relate to this. It's like when we're working, for example, in Amazon, right? And Amazon is present across multiple countries, as you just mentioned. It's very quick. It's very easy to sometimes make the assumption that what is happening on a specific country in terms of performance and the performance begin for a certain strategy. People assume that by doing the same thing just because it's Amazon, by in another country it's gonna work the same. And here is a very quick example of how that's not the case. Sometimes we have clients that they sell, let's say, in Amazon Mexico, right? And you have
Hmm.
Spanish, right? And then they bring the
Yeah,
same product.
Mexican Spanish,
Yeah,
not.
Mexican Spanish. That's
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And then you bring the same product to what we call Spain, right? In this case,
Hmm.
Amazon Spain. So the first mistake people might assume is that when it comes to advertisement, keywords are very similar, which is completely not the case. Like, for example, a keyword that comes to my mind is like playera, right?
Hmm.
Playera,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, in Spain, it doesn't mean t-shirt, right? Playera.
No, no,
No, yeah.
no.
But in Mexico, playera is t-shirt. I think playera in Spain, I don't even know what Spanish people would.
Camiseta would be.
Camiseta,
Mhm.
yeah, that would be
Yeah.
camiseta. So that's a very quick example how if you're a German person that is selling Amazon Mexico and then you bring your post from Mexico to Spain because you're German, you don't know the difference in culture between Spanish people and Mexican and the language, you might assume straight away just for simplicity that when you do the strategy shift from one country to another, to not adapt it just because assume Spanish includes all these things. So that's a very quick mistake I see all the time people doing. And the same applies, let's say, from United States to
To
Canada
the
or the
UK.
UK. People
Yeah.
assume the keywords are also the same, but we know from a fact, I'm pretty sure you as well, because I know you also work in the space of localization, you have experience with that, that
Hmm.
it's not the case. I mean, localization is not even about finding these keywords such as playera, camiseta. It's also about understanding how specific people shop, right? Another big example is, for example, I spend a lot of time, as you know, in Latin America, and I also spend a lot of time across Europe, specifically also Spain, because the family of my girlfriend is from Spain. And another thing I also noticed, like when it comes to the actual product itself, if you don't really understand the culture of the country itself, you might do very costly mistakes. And I'm gonna give you another example here. When it comes to, for example, and this applies not only to this example, but this is something you guys should do every single time you expand to a new country. If you have a price of a specific product, right? And I'm gonna put now very simple the playera, like the same playera example. Let's say the same playera in Spain, in Amazon Spain, you have to sell it for 30 euros, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes you might seem okay because big brands do keep the same price the same. Like, I mean, they don't keep the same price, but are very similar. Like Apple, for example, an iPhone, when it
Yeah.
comes to Europe, USA, and UK, prices are similar. The only fluctuation is the currency, but you don't see a massive change on top of the currency. But when it comes to specific products that are more like Me Too products or more generic products, there's actually a big shift in also how people react to pricing. There is a lot of price sensitivity for the mere fact that the income in Mexico is much lower. The average income in Mexico is much lower than Spain. So if you don't understand those economics as well, when you expand to those countries, you might fail just for the mere fact that you think the 30 euro is going to work in Mexico. Most of the time we see that's not the case. So that's usually another thing that you should consider when expanding internationally, but not only pricing. I'm going to also give you a culture example. Another culture example is, let's say, I'm gonna try to think something. Yes, this product. Like, let's say in Mexico, is very famous. The products around like Halloween. They have this called Dia de los Muertos in Mexico. That's
Uh-huh.
very big,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And this is something that you might assume that is, and this again is a very simplistic example, but it's not ideal. But I see this happening on our specific niches. But just for the sake of giving an example, you may assume that because this Hispanic
Hmm.
community and the Dia de los Muertos is very common, not only in Mexico but in Latin America, it's actually very well known. That you might think, okay, actually, if I bring this to Spain, because I make the assumption that in Spain there is also a lot of Latin people, maybe this is gonna work correctly. But the thing you're not taking in consideration is that if you don't do the market research, and maybe and also making this up, and this is not the case, but imagine that you go to you bring this Dia de los Muertos costumes and hats and all of that to Spain
Uh-huh.
because you're making the assumption of Latin America, which, don't get me wrong, Latin America, the community is very big. But as I say, it's very big in Mexico. And you're getting this data from Amazon Mexico. And you say, okay, that means in Amazon Spain it could work. But what if I tell you that in Spain, the biggest percentage of Latin American people, again, I'm not saying that's
It's
the
not
right answer,
Mexicans.
it's Argentinians, so Brazilians, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's already a complete different cultural shift. And just because you're including so many people into the same category, which is Latin America, you already made a big, super huge mistake. And then that is going to end up being super close. So the summary, so I don't become very technical, is that don't make a don't generalize just because of a language or because of a region. Like even USA and Canada, they are close to each other, but they're
But
products
they've
that
got nothing to do. Yeah.
nothing to do at
Definitely.
all.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
the economics is very important. Culture is very important, and another very important thing is weather. Like another very important thing, and this happens to my UK clients. Like I have a client that they're very big into winter related items like jackets and all of that. They even have
Mhm.
things for raining. Well, in the UK, it's always raining, so for them, UK is perfect market, right? But let's say, to make a simplistic scenario, take an umbrella, right? That's for raining, right? You take
Mhm.
the same product, right? And you bring that product, for example, to even Spain, to use Spain against us, the same example.
Mhm.
I mean, Spain actually doesn't have a lot of raining compared to the UK, right? It's actually very sunny
Not
most of
even,
the time.
not even, not even a little bit lately. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's also a super thing, a super big mistake that people omit. Like,
Mhm.
just weather alone can make or break your business, because maybe you could assume, based on other metrics such as the language and all of that, like going back to Mexico and Spain, you could assume that, I don't know, for some reason you encounter that Hispanic people use a lot of umbrellas for some reason. But then, if you actually don't go deeper into the data, maybe you
Mhm.
discover that the reason why a lot of Spanish speaking people use umbrella is because, let's say, in Latin America, again making an assumption, rains a
Mhm.
lot, but that's not the case in Spain, and they share the same language, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, this is very easy to do mistakes, and I see all the time, and I can tell you, people lose a lot of money because they don't do this simple thinking, which I feel
Yeah.
is a shame, right? And people should be doing. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially, and this also happens, like we've got like loads of clients from the US, and they want to obviously expand into Europe,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and they just see Europe as a block. They
Mm-hmm.
just don't realize that there's like French
Just like a
people,
check,
German
just a
people.
check.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, yeah. It's just like, oh yeah, Europe there.
Yeah.
So trying to localize that into European,
Yeah.
into European language is like,
Yeah.
okay, which one? So
Yeah.
I think it's also like our minds are we do try to, as you said before, like to generalize or to think like
Mm-hmm.
in big chunks of like
Mm-hmm.
things, and we have to take into account the context, no?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, definitely, I do really agree. And what about, um because you were obviously saying about the importance of like localization and having like a really like local knowledge in order
Mm-hmm.
to land in a new market. Any and we have obviously seen some do's and
Mm.
don'ts.
Yeah.
Anything else that that you need to like have people
Yeah.
like very clear, like, okay, don't do this, like, sort of
Yeah.
thing, apart from like obviously keyword research, that we need to do like a local keyword research, obviously, because people from different countries and different cultures, we look for information in a
Mm-hmm.
different way, even as you said, Mexican and Spain,
Yeah.
but not just because we have like different words, but just because we have different needs in
Yeah.
different like cultures, no?
Yeah.
Any don'ts, like big don'ts, that we're missing here?
So another big done, and I think this one will also go tied a little bit with the cultural difference we're mentioning, is religion related, religions in
Mm-hmm,
the regions as
mm-hmm,
well.
mm-hmm,
Because again, there are certain things that could be offensive for certain kind of communities based on their beliefs, and and the religion is also a small fraction. It could also be political,
mm-hmm,
and along those lines. So I would say, also make sure that when you're expanding to a specific a country, I don't have an example now in the top of my head, but I know in the past it happened to us that
mm-hmm,
the expansion wasn't as successful as we wanted to, because they has some negative attributions to the specific religion of the country we went into, right? And not only the
mm-hmm.
religion, but also the political. Like, for example, I don't want to go into politics, but there are certain there are certain things,
Like
especially,
the sensible topics,
yeah,
politics and religion,
yeah,
definitely.
especially if you do print on demand and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
That we have big clients that do that, and
Yeah.
they've been struggling in some specific regions because, for example, this specific type of client, they come from the United States.
Hmm.
And all the print and demand that they do is very like entrepreneurship, business orientated, do your own thing, like full capital means all that kind of
Yeah,
mindset,
yeah.
right? And basically they try with the same kind of branding and all of
Copy,
that.
yeah, or
Yeah,
branding, whatever. Yeah.
brand and everything, they tried to enter into Europe, and actually it wasn't very successful for them
Hmm.
because let's be honest, in Europe, when we talk about entrepreneurship, it's actually in Europe, it's not actually not as big as the States. In fact, most people, and I
Hmm.
bet you've experienced this, when you tell your entrepreneurs in Europe, it's like entrepreneur, like you have your own business, that even possible, right?
Hmm.
In Europe, it's not
Yeah.
big. It's not a
Yeah,
normal
we are
behavior.
we are into it a little bit, but
Yeah,
it is very true, and that's how they actually they communicate, and their style is much more direct. And
yeah,
here we are just like, oh, yeah, entrepreneurs, yes, but don't
yeah, yeah.
tell
Go
me
slow.
these big lines and headlines,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah, that's very
So
American, definitely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So for example, that's a very quick example how even political and religions can also affect the performance of a product, right? I would say another big no as well is that when you expand into these countries as well, you need to make sure that they are not also and there's no negative media attached to the product you want to sell, and this I think will apply more for things that are like food or supplements and things like that, right? Because
Hmm.
um I'm just gonna try to think of a specific example. Let's say, for example, I'm gonna try to think of a candy, right? A candy that's very,
Yeah.
very famous. Let's say in United States, as a good example, and you wanna bring
Hmm.
that specific candy, let's say to I'm gonna make the example to Italy, and let's say that in Italy, this candy is has a lot of bad press lately because it has a lot of sugar, a lot of things, and
Uh-huh.
people create a bad stigma towards that specific type of food and or even cream to put in the skin or all of that. Like, that specific products that people when start watching the media start getting the bad media that maybe this product creates cancer or all these kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
things,
yeah.
and you need to be very careful with those things because if sometimes, I mean, if it's true it's a bad product, of course, first of all you need to stop the product. But if it's just based on typical influencers that are being disrupting the space with certain sense about specific food or something, maybe it's not right by just what people believe in that community, you're
Mhm,
also gonna suffer because at the end of the day, what the trends of a country outside of Amazon, talking just generic of our own, might also affect the people, the way people shop because that's how people interact between their friends, between their family. That's what they say to each other.
mhm,
And if they have a bad stigma about, to the quick example of sugar, and sugar is very no in Europe, and maybe you're coming from the US, that people in the US maybe don't care too much about sugar yet, that's another factor that can affect us. So there are so many things that we might omit, and again, I could even go deeper into regulations,
yeah, of
climate change
course.
impact, materials, and all of that. But just to
Mhm.
keep it brief, I will say every single thing that you might assume it might not affect definitely can. Make sure you do the. I think the easiest way actually to give advice to somebody, if you're gonna expand to a country, let's say you're selling a phone case, just to make an example, which by the way, to everybody listening, that's a very saturated product. Don't sell that. But let's say
Don't
you're
do it.
selling, yeah. But if you wanna sell a phone case and you wanna enter the Spanish market and you come from the States, easiest thing to do: buy the top 10 competitors in Spain and dissect them, reverse engineering them, everything, packaging, instructions, language in the packaging, what they're using in terms of the perks. Even some of the boxes can give you leads of where are they producing the products and all of that. And that's the cheapest way that you can definitely know if a product is a go or not for you based on your capabilities from the States. That's very easy advice. Yeah.
That's a very nice advice. Like definitely competition analysis. Like
Yeah.
when doing business abroad, but obviously Amazon, as you were saying, it is like a very big thing. Like to do it and easy, as you were saying, just buy
Hmm.
the products and that's it.
Reverse. Yeah.
And And talking about cross borders and everything,
Hmm.
how have you done your own cross borders? I mean, because you are based in the UK.
Yeah.
Obviously, I reckon by what you were saying, you've got clients from the US as well. How did you do your own internationalization process? Tell us.
Yeah. So when it comes for us as an agency, how we became international,
Hmm. Did you do
I would,
SEO? Did you go to events? Did you
yeah,
do a mix?
yeah.
Come on.
So I would say for the side of the business I am, which is service providers and agencies, something that has
Hmm.
worked very well for me is networking, right?
Hmm.
And every single time people come to me that they start a new agency and everything, they tell me, how do I scale? I say, go to every single meetup you have in your city, in your country, if you can travel, because at the end of the day, you are one single person away to connect with the right other person that's going to put you on a specific position, that's going to allow you to showcase your skills. And if the skills succeed, which, because that's a big important thing of the equation, like you get
Yeah.
one shot, but if you blow the shot, then that's it. But if you get the shot and you prove that you know what you're doing, that's where the actual opportunity arises. And that's what I've been doing. Like I've been going to all the single events, and you know it. I mean, in LinkedIn, you always see me.
Yeah. You
and,
are
and
everywhere. You're
yeah,
everywhere.
so every single event I try to go, because again, you're one conversation away to learn something new or meet somebody that you can provide value to them, they can provide value to you, and that's going to be the difference of making or breaking your business. And that's how I also expand international. Like every single time, i want um I want to keep expanding to specific regions like United States and Latin America and so on. I try to first of all go to the top events on that region, and then try to also provide as much value to the top people in the space of that region. And also on top of that, try to understand what is going on in that market. I want to understand who is the top agency in the space, who is the top consultant in the space, who is the top content creator in the space. And from there, of course, I try to understand how I can provide them value. Maybe for them, their goal is to actually they want to let's say they specialize on a US market and that's it. But maybe my specialty is more the UK. So what do? I go to this location and say, okay, I'm more than happy to give you contacts from Europe or clients that want to expand to the US. That's your specialty, so you take over from there. And maybe the ones that you have that want to go to Europe that maybe you don't have a clue, I'm your guy, right? So
Yeah.
that's an easy way how you can make a very nice partnership. And I wouldn't say advertisement and ACO, as you briefly mentioned, is not good. I just think that the typical for what we do agencies like doing Facebook, Instagram advertisement, all that. I don't really think that works, because let's be honest, if you
Hmm.
have a nice brand, right, and you have an issue and you're already doing let's say you're an Amazon seller, you're selling in the US and you want to expand to Europe, you're not gonna make the decision of choosing an agency just because you're scrolling on your Instagram and you see me doing a specific reel jumping
Hmm.
around or telling you, "Oh, you're losing money. Come to me, call me," and all of that. I don't, let's be honest, that's not how proper founders operate. Especially if you're working with big brands that you're talking more with CFOs and all of that. The way they
Hmm.
interact is like word of mouth and recommendations, and you know that guy.
Hmm.
Okay, you recommend me, I trust you. So try to focus more on building meaningful relationships. And at the end of the day, this is going to take time and money. You need to travel, you need to invest into building these relationships. And I would say actually focus on meaningful relationship. What I mean with this, I don't want you to take all this advice and think that all these relationships are just for the sake of taking advantage, or that's it. Actually, all of these people I'm talking about, they're actually now my friends. We talk on WhatsApp. I go
Yeah.
sometimes to their birthday. It's more than that. I just want you to understand that if you really want to step up, you need to create this meaningful relationship. Because if you just stay in your office, in your room, and try to grow the business without meeting or interacting with anybody, I think it's going to be very tough, regardless of how
Yeah.
good you are with ACO and all of them.
Yeah, definitely. That's why, the name of this podcast, Global Bonds,
Yeah.
we are like, we have to try to build this forever lasting relationships with people, because as we said before, at the end of the day, although we are in the digital or in the Amazon ecosystem, we need to talk to people, and like, this is a people to people business, and when we understand this, this is obviously the case. But also, I would say that's something that has like really make you really stand out with, because I follow you, is your podcast. Tell us about
Yeah.
your podcast. How did you start it, and why, and what's the learnings? Because I've seen like really amazing people there, and I'm a really like a big podcast advocate, and you are in my playlist every week, I would say, because I don't know how many of them do you do every week. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just crazy. It's just crazy.
Yeah. So I think the podcast idea came from the fact that because I've been traveling and meeting so many smart and wonderful people, I was saying,
Hmm.
actually, how can I share this experience with more people? Because I'm learning and growing as a person, getting a lot of very good formation from the top people in the space. But I think it will mean a lot for me if I can actually get this to the masses as well and make it accessible to anybody. Like my podcast is like free, like you don't need to pay anything. It's like accessible from any platform, anyway, any location. And the goal here is to further decentralize the information to make it accessible to anybody. And the second thing is that all these people have something interesting to share. So what I do with the podcast is all these relationships I'm building across the globe, I bring it into the podcast to basically bring all this knowledge under the same ceiling and make it a nice, 30 minutes, like just having a coffee with them. I share my experience of when we met. They tell me a little bit about their background so people can learn about them. And I think the nice thing as an end result of this, first of all, that strengthens the relationship between me and that person. The second thing is they provide value to the community as a whole, because all the knowledge they're bringing is top, like is the best
Yeah,
on
it's
the
top
space.
notch. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And I would say the final thing, which at the end of the day is what both of us wants always as partners, is that it generates awareness for both of us. It generates awareness for them because it brings traffic and leads to them, and also it generates awareness for us as a podcast, so we can keep bringing bigger and bigger guests, right? So yeah, it's been a fun journey. I mean, we do like 2 to 4 episodes per week.
Two
So
to four episodes per week. Oh my god! I
yeah.
mean, but did you start that big, or you just like kept on like adding like new episodes every week?
So yeah, man, there was a period we actually were doing one per day, but that was too much, and
Oh
then we
my
went
goodness!
down.
That's a
And
lot.
then
Yeah.
yeah, and we've been trying a couple of dynamics. We also try Q&A sessions. We've been trying just
Hmm.
myself videos, but I think the format I'm liking the most now is only bringing guests.
Hmm.
The thing with this is it didn't start like with this many guesses, but the thing is because I have met so many wonderful people across
Yeah.
all these events and everything.
Events. Yeah.
I never actually thought I could have so many people to bring, but now it's opposite. Sometimes I have so many people waiting that which is a good issue to have. uh, I have a lot. I need to release enough quantity so it doesn't create a big backlog. And at the end of the day, the beauty of that is that you realize actually there are so many people that there's some people in my podcast that never been on a podcast, and the only reason why they came to my podcast is because they trust me in the sense that they knew I was gonna be a. I actually incentivized them to come into the podcast because I knew the
Hmm.
value they bring to the space, but they're very shy or they're never been
Yeah.
into a podcast. And that's actually something that a lot of people has appreciated because I get them an opportunity to create a voice that maybe they didn't have before, but now that actually help them to now get into our podcast and things like that. So I think
Hmm.
everybody has something meaningful to share, and I like my podcast to be the ground sometimes for them to shine, right?
Yeah. Very good. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I do really enjoy it, and especially
Which, by the way, we
also.
need to have you on my podcast as well.
Oh my God! That's going to be the way around. And it is also like very interesting because you are doing it multilingual.
Yeah,
When are you
Spanish and
having
English.
Italian there? When are you having Italian there?
So yeah,
Because
Italian
the
actually.
Italian, because the Italian ecosystem, from my humble opinion, I think it's growing and it's getting like
Mhm.
very big
I think the
lately.
same.
Yeah, I think like they had like this really big ecom show last year, which I'm thinking about going there. I did. I mean, I can't speak Italian, so I'll try. I'll try to manage with
You
my
can
Spanish
you can
anyway.
take me with you, and I
Oh
help
yeah,
you.
come on, we could go together. Yeah, and I think I do think Italian and market for e-commerce is like a big blossoming one. What do you reckon?
Yeah, to be honest, Italian is something I keep getting requests. You're not the only one mentioning that. It's just that I think that that's a signal that I need to go more to more things in Italy, more events and so on. Because
Hmm.
unfortunately, I don't know why I haven't had the luck to meet a lot of people that speak Italian than that do Amazon e-commerce, right? So I think
Hmm.
it just I need to meet more people in the
Yeah,
Italian market, but it's definitely coming. I mean, I speak Italian and I definitely want to do it. It's just that yeah, I'm cooking. I need to find the right people,
you
and
need
it's
to.
definitely
Yeah,
something that's gonna come. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, perfect. So just to finish up, because we've been like having like 45 minutes
Yeah.
ish. Um, two questions that I always ask
Yeah.
in every episode. And especially the first one for you is going to be very interesting because you've got this multilingual background.
Mhm.
Any anecdotes, good slash bad or whatever, that you could tell us about miscommunication because of like cultural differences or language uh, clash or whatever? It could be personal or professional.
Yeah. Okay. So let me think in terms of any miscommunication. So yeah, something maybe this is not miscommunication, but it has to do with yeah the way the people in that specific region behaves, and sometimes if you don't understand
Hmm.
this, that can create conflict, right? So something that has happened to me in the last couple of months, because I'm working now a lot with China and all of that, is that I don't know why, but there's a cultural thing there that they don't know how to say no, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
they say
yeah.
yes, 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 right?
But
And
that yes doesn't mean that yes. It
yeah,
could be that
exactly.
no. Yeah.
So that's something that actually has created some misunderstanding a lot, like because sometimes I'm doing a project and then I say this and that, they say yes, and then next week goes by and they say yes, but actually we meant that yes, we understood what you said, but we actually don't know how to do it. Or things like that, right? So I think that's a very quick example. And I have hundreds of modules that are not coming to my mind, but also in Spanish, like when I'm talking with Latin American or Spanish clients, like there's certain words and things that sometimes are funny and mean sort of things. I think
Hmm.
at the end of the day, that's the beauty of this model. Like when you work with so many diverse people from all around the globe, it's like you understand that actually the world is so much bigger than what we think sometimes in our mind, because sometimes we are caught into our bubble that we think the
Yeah.
world is my house, the supermarket next door,
Yeah.
and the shopping
My
mall,
neighborhood. Yeah.
and
And
that's it. But then you realize you're just a drop of water in the ocean, right? And there's so many things
uh,
going on and so many things to learn from. And I think at the end of the day, what it teaches you is that you just have to be humble and keep learning and adapting, because yeah, you just I would say myself, I'm always at the disposal of my clients, right? That the other way around. I'm actually trying my best to always adapt to people, right? And
mhm.
hoping people adapt to me, because I think that's something that creates a lot of misunderstanding. If you are the type of person that think, oh, I'm Italian, people just has to adapt to me because I'm just only speak Italian and my culture is this, and you need to speak to me certain things. Otherwise, I think you're not professional, for example. And that's not the case. You
Yeah.
need to be open minded, right? So.
That's a very good one. And the last question to finish off. Well, it's a question. It's just, well, yeah, it is a question. Who would you reckon I could invite uh, into the podcast that has something to do with international cross borders, whatever. Who would you like to see here being
Yes.
interviewed by me?
Yeah, somebody that I think is very interesting, and actually, he was um, he was also in the Barcelona event. Maybe you
Uh-huh.
remember him. He was one of the speakers. He is Bruno Pereira. He's
Oh
was
yeah. Okay.
you know him, right?
Oh yeah, of
So
course. Yeah.
so Bruno is actually an interesting one because he works very he has also experience but with Amazon, but the other side of Amazon, which a lot of people
Yeah.
don't talk to, and it's a
Yeah.
specific niche, which is the vendor. So that means
The
working with
vendors.
Amazon.
Yeah, I know. He did
So
like
he
a
has a lot
very,
of
very
interaction.
amazing presentation
Yeah,
in the amazing days in
yeah.
Barcelona. Yeah,
So he
definitely.
has
Yeah.
interesting insights because he has worked with people across the globe as well. Because as a vendor, you have that opportunity as well, and he has also a
Mhm.
lot of experience with different cultures. So yeah, I think for your channel that is cross-border related, he will add a ton of value. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I would definitely reach out
Yeah.
and tell him to come around. So, Vincenzo, it's been amazing. Thank you very much for your time and
Same.
your tips. This episode has been like insightful, and it's going to be very good for the audience who is or who wants to navigate the Amazon ecosystem and especially cross borders. So, Vincenzo, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Oscar. It's been a pleasure. Yeah.
Okay, bye bye.